Huh. What they asked exactly to you in interview? Can you tell me? What was the question in interview? Huh. You listened, you learned the routing concept. You were there in the class, right? We discussed about how the route table is generated, how the route engine will pick up the routes. You are there? Uh, Generally, our interviewers will invent new things, right? Right. So they will put a new cycle for you. You may be thinking like something new actually. That means their intention is to ask you about how this routing actually works to make sure that you know about routing properly. That means about the process, how it happens actually. So that will be the main intention actually for routing, and that we discussed already, right? Mm, right. Now, some more. Uh, some person pinged a message like, so do we have a how we will learn how to learn about single page application. What you are doing in Angular is single page application. Everything in Angular is single page. Angular application is a single page application. Now, by the end of Angular, if you ask the question like, so, sir, at the end, will you show one single page application? Then it's like serious comedy, right? You are joking, right? All these days we were discussing on the same concept that Angular is building a single page application. Every component comes there. Everything is working on there. Everything is single page application only, right? So because sometimes you people doesn't concentrate much on what you are learning, right? You just have a question from your friend. On behalf of him, you have to ask a question. Due to that, this type of mess up will happen with you, right? So technically, whatever we learned till now is actually single page application only now. At the time of component hierarchies. So we are starting with only one page. What is that page? Index.html. Am I right? We are starting with index.html, everything coming onto that index.html. So we have only one page and we created routing for that so that user will stay on one page and he gets access to everything on that page. Obviously, that is all the concept, right? That is all the concept. Actually, so sometimes, so in the interviews, they may ask you about version based questions, so which are important actually, right? So that means like sometimes anyone may ask you, like just now said, do you have a router life cycle? Actually, it is not technically any router life cycle. It is not technically any router life cycle. So the process of configuring the routes, loading the routes, rendering the routes to you, and deactivating the routes, all this. So under the cycle, so this, there is no separate routing cycle, right? There is not separate routing cycle. So the component cycle is important, and some points are there related to routing, which you have to learn with combination of other concepts, which I will tell you. That means we need to understand with other concepts. Like sometimes some people ask the question like, already, so some people have questions like, sir, how about Angular security, right? Now, there are two contradictory things actually from developers, right? Without knowing the topic, when you talk about the topic, so much misguided, you are very much misguided. Actually, Angular security and technically, Angular security and application security, these are different things actually. So usually Angular security means how you will prevent cross-site scripting attacks, right? So those comes under security, how you will handle the injection attacks. These are the security related things actually. So some people ask, sir, user login ID, login registration, security will you teach? That is not security, that is authentication and authorization. And that requires with the backend integration we can handle, right? When you learn about such things, you will learn about how do we handle some more points related to routing, some more points you will learn about routing. So here we are having 2 points to discuss detailedly, right? So in routing, some more things I will show you, which you will come across with proper integration. It doesn't mean that when you are learning routing, beginning to end, everything finish here itself. There are so many things which you need to learn with combination of other things, then it will be great in understanding. Otherwise, it's like just finish the course and say that this topic you want, I finished it, complete. Now no more questions, go. Right? That is not the right way. That is the reason the topics that we discuss here, we are keeping according to the situation. So we are dealing with them. Yesterday, somebody asked route guards, right? So first point is, if you know what is route guards, then you should know the situation where to use the route guards. Then we will discuss about that. That is one of the style that we are learning from the beginning. We are not learning topic-based concepts. We are learning functional based concepts according to that situation, which one fits that we are learning. That is the point we need to learn. You will learn whatever needed for the development, but only the point is when to learn, that is important, right? So for that, now we can to further go and discuss other things in Angular. So we have to deal with, right? So we have to deal with. So technically, you have any doubt, you can later ask the questions, right? Yeah. So technically, so we have to deal with some more options and understand some more things situation wise. Like first thing is, yeah, you can share your questions asked in interviews, no problem, right? So then we will discuss. And we already discussed everything, but only the point is, if anything is asked related to what we are going to discuss now, that you will see, however, right? And already Only one point is, if anything asked in interview and you are unable to handle that, you can ask here. So just the point is, we already discussed it, but only the point you need to know is this related to which topic. That means, because when they ask the question, they may ask in a different scenario, but it is the concept that you already know. Only the point is you need to know that it belongs to that scenario, right? That is the option, right? So we will see that. So if you can share your questions, I will discuss them in a separate session. We will talk about them. Okay, no problem. Right. Fine. Right. So that means whatever you learned, only those they will ask, but they will ask in a different scenario. That's the reason many times you are confused about them. So yeah. So fine. First, let's see. Here, once we deal with the routing, two more things regularly asked actually for the general routing scenarios actually, which we will discuss with a proper example. That is the reason we will not discuss now. And first, one more option is here. The one more important option is in routing. So the frequently asked question. So in the routing, and it is very important also. So what is base? What is base href? So this is base href. So base href. So this is base href. This is the important doubt regularly comes. What is base href? And this is important so to understand, and without this actually routing concept will not actually work technically. So that means what is base href and what is the purpose of this base href? The concept is important and it is simple to understand actually. Technically, the main concept behind this is why we need this base href and what is the intention of this base href. Yeah, actually, this is very much need to be understood in the context of actually deployment, because we haven't still seen one simple deployment process. I will show you a small deployment process. So such questions will come related to routing, but they are related to different contexts. They belong to routing. They are related to different contexts actually. But I will show you in another situation, so how it actually works. So that means while learning and while working with the deployments, so we can have a lot of deployments. I will separately tell you a point about deployment. I will give you a overview about deployment. And usually the main concept is, for this you need to understand some things like already, right? Generally, all routing applications, usually all the routing apps, technically all the routing apps usually fall back into one location. All the routing apps fall back into one location actually. That means technically all the routing apps fall into one. So what is that one location actually? So Angular application is by default single page application, Technically it is the by default single page application. So that generally we know that it is the default single page application. Here the key point is, so when it is a single page application, so routed apps actually it uses routing to access the components from a single page. to access the components from single page. Components from single page. That means actually all routed applications, routed apps must fall back to index.html. They should fall back to index.html. That means this is from where we start actually. This is from where we start actually. Everything must fall back into this. Everything must fall back into this. So that means this is where we have to access. We have to access everything. From where we need to access everything. Because this topic belongs to the concept of routing, but it is related to deployment. That is the reason when deployment point comes, I will show you an overview of that actually. So Angular applications, so all routed applications, they fall back into index.html. That means if the application is using Angular router, so that means if application is using Angular router, then you must configure the server to return the application host page. Then you must configure the server to return the application's host page. And the application's host page is actually index.html. This is important. The application host page is index.html. So that means a routed application should support a concept called deep links, which are asked in interviews again. So technically, a routed application should support deep links. In experience level interviews, they may ask like this also. That means they may ask like, what do you know about deep links in Angular? Because majority of times what happens is this much in-depth asking about concept is not required actually. But if you show vast experience, then they can ask such questions. Vast experience means, then for vast experience person, what should I ask? I should ask something very complicated, which he also never heard about that, or so he also never know about this in detail. Because even a developer has some restrictions. He will not know everything. He have only limited knowledge. In that case, so that means we have to ask him something which is more in-depth about the concept and more technical actually. Technically, so if anyone asks like what are deep links, so this is very not familiar. So it's very rare term used, but it is very technical. Actually, deep links are nothing but a deep link is a URL that specifies the path to a component inside the application. That specifies the path to a component inside the application. That is called deep link. That means, for example, actually technically you should know that. So deep link, technically deep link is a URL. So that specifies a path to a component inside app, to a component inside application. We call this as deep links. So we generally call this as deep link. So generally, how deep link is defined actually. Deep link, you know it, but only the point is you don't know its technical thing. You know it, but you don't know the technical concept. That means suppose HTTP, suppose syntactically, :/ some www dot some amazon.in. So in that, so we have mobiles. So in the mobiles, suppose 10, so something like 10. Now this is is it is a deep link. We call this as deep link. That means a deep link will specify which component you are accessing. Which component you are accessing. So it specifies which component you are accessing. It can be anything like, so in mobiles you have details. This is a deep link. That means it specifies in that particular routing path which component exactly you are accessing. Suppose so here I said http:// so amazon.in. If I define like this, it is the root. It is the root. That means you can simply say that it is requesting host page. It is requesting host page. That means which one will be rendered to you. You will see that you will directly get to index.html. It is requesting the host page and it is requesting any component and rendering that component in the host page. Deep link is that actually. So that means server always usually it returns, technically server always returns. So this index.html when it receives the request from the client. But if you are requesting any specific, more detailedly, then it will return that component. Then this is actually called as deep links. We generally call them as deep links. Now the key point here is, so when we are developing for applications for production and all, right, we need to know all these things, right? So generally this all comes under the concept of deployment actually. Okay, now it specifies the path. So that means technically what is base href, means technically how you define that href, right? So when we are configuring that href, when you are defining the base href, that means the HTML have base href is equal to some options defined here. The base href is configured with some options here, right? Now technically, so the important thing is, so this HTML, it's a HTML element. It specifies the base path for resolving the URLs. So that means the base path, that means actually the HTML base href specifies a base path. It specifies a base path. Actually, base path defines where the application related. So static resources are present. It defines where the application related static resources are present. Technically, where the static resources are present, it defines the base path. That means very important is when you are configuring the base path, when you are defining the base path. So if all the resources are present in a same location, that means all our resources are present in this base path. Actually, all are present in this app folder. This is app folder, but our assets are present outside the app folder. That means, and not only assets, our testing related files, other related files are present in SRC folder. Our styles are present in SRC folder. Styles are present in SRC folder. Style CSS are present in SRC folder. That means, and very important is Others are generally present in libraries, are present in node modules. That means now if your all resources are kept in one subfolder and you want your application to start and pick up that subfolder, then you can define. That means the base path defines where the application related resources are present. That means base href is equal to slash. Base href is equal to slash. That is what the option is. So if the base href is defined as slash, that means it is referring to, so it is referring to the root, referring to the application root, to the application root level folder. If your resources are configured in any another folder, then you have to configure, you have to define it as, the base path. You have to define it as the base path. For example, sometimes if the resources are present in some other location, then you have to define the base, and you have to define href is equal to, you have to say that it is in means your project, in your project app folder. That is how you can configure. We need to configure that. This is very much important. That means your folder, in that subfolder, you need to configure that. This is very much required, especially when you are deploying. Deploying means finally we are publishing. When you are finally publishing, you have to tell the deploying environment. I will show you deploying, how it is done. One simple example I will show you. When deploying is done, then what happens is the final content to be kept in one location, and the path should refer to that location correctly. Otherwise, resources will not work properly. You can see that. So generally, when you are using routing, when you are configuring routing in your application, index.html, you can see index.html. It is in the head section. It is defined with this base href. It is defined with the base href. It is configured with the base href. That means it is configured with the root level. It is configured with the root level. Now, ng-serve-project is equal to some shopping is the project. Shopping is the project. So that is the project I'm starting with. That means actually the root folder is our workspace actually now. In the current situation, it is workspace because our node modules, our styles, so we can keep at one place and we can access from some another project also. You have seen in the workspace, the services, the pipes also can be accessed from other servers, from other applications. From other projects also we can access that. So technically the point is, so if you have only one application and you are deploying that application, this is enough. So base href is important. This base href, without this, routing is not going to work. Important. So that means for routing, you need this base href. So Angular application. So this is important point. First point, Angular application cannot implement routing. So and accessing of resources. So when deployed on server without configuring. So base href, without configuring base href. This is mandatory. Cannot implement routing and accessing of resources when deployed on server without configuring base href. So that is very important for deployment process. important for deployment for process. So here I am accessing, technically I'm accessing here. So the path we have configured. So let's access that simple local host and see that here. Yeah. And you can see it is working. This shopping is working. We configured everything and defined here. Now I don't have this base href. I don't have the base href configured there. So we don't have any base href configured in the index.html. In the index.html. Now you see, so it's not working. So that means when you go to inspect, so then in that inspect, you can see the console. So have some errors, and you can see that in the errors, it is very much clear. So it says that no base href set, please provide a value for this element. Actually, this is related to path location strategy. This is related to path location strategy. So that means it is important for locating the path of your resources from where you are accessing them. For example, suppose I defined, so base href is equal to some app. So that means it is the app folder. So, and so it is some SRC, something like this. So SRC app, we are configuring like SRC, like app, like this. That is the base resource we configured there. So that means some other location we defined. And you can see that it says that, so now you got several errors actually. And what are actually those errors? So we have 5 errors. So all the errors here are nothing, but it says that so many issues are related to resolving the location. What are the resources related to resolving the location? That means what are the problems occurred is it is unable to access these files. So that means it is unable to access these files. You can see it says that I am unable to locate these files. That means there is a problem. Base href is there, but the path is not correctly configured because our resources are present in different locations. That means actually, suppose we have a shopping/shopping. So in the shopping, we have some SRC, in SRC, we have some other app. Still here you can see that it indicates that so these resources are all not allowed to you because this SRC and app is not having all the content. Some are present in direct SRC, some are present in app. So some are in assets. So much options hierarchy problem will be there. Suppose if I say that it is shopping, that means the root folder is shopping. That means it is the shopping root folder, but in that all these items are located and it is able to access that. That means that is the root folder that is working fine now. That means now this is the shopping project root folder which contains all of these. If I give any specific folder, then it will be only for that particular folder, Here you can see customers, so vendors, all details are working fine. They are working fine. Now the point is, it's not mandatory that this should be /. Usually people know generally when learning. So because when learning, many people learn Angular with just one application, not with workspace. Without workspace, they will create a project and start working with the project. And they finish Angular with that one project. So that means they don't know how do we set up the environment for multiple projects. That is very much important at the real world level. So wherever you see, right, generally in online or anywhere, how to create an Angular application, just you will see a simple approach that ng new app. I hope you have observed so many times, right? Wherever you see how to create an Angular application, you will see only one process regularly, everywhere. So because that is okay for that particular level, but at higher level, we need to know how do we manage multiple projects and how we handle multiple domains and how we configure the path for them at a higher level. So that's the reason we started working with Workspace, configuring with Workspace to know the exact point here. That means now you can access everything from this location, accessing from this, right? You have to access in that location. That is general actually. So that means now I hope everyone understood that. That means this indicates from where the resources need to be picked up for this application. Without this, it is not going to work. It is not going to work. So you need to configure this in index.html. So in index.html, it is mandatory to configure. So that means when you are using index.html, in index.html, in the head section, this is mandatory. You have to configure that path and you have to define that path. It is mandatory to configure and define that path. So in the head section, that is important. Without that, so it is not going to access. Now it will work with slash also. Slash represents all folders. Now here one problem is there actually. Suppose I am trying to implement some Bootstrap. I will go to the CSS here and I will use here import, and from where to import? // in the node modules bootstrap this to CSS bootstrap.css. That's how I configured the CSS and I'm applying the CSS bootstrap. And I refresh here, you can see that this bootstrap is not working. So here, so the bootstrap is there, fine. So that means initially you are configuring, and you can observe here, this is the content it is delivering the options and displaying. And we are accessing this from a resource location. Now important is that is okay. Why? Because it is directly accessing from that location. That means from some other project it is accessing. If the styles are kept in the same project and we have to access from the same project, then obviously you don't need this entire path to configure. And this path will go wrong, especially if you are deploying now. Why this path will go wrong? Because so when you are deploying, you will be deploying only one application. When you are deploying only one application, this path will go wrong always. Why? Because in one application, node modules is not present in our current project. That means our current project refers directly slash. That means, so directly our project refers to slash. That means slash, so we have node modules. So if you configure this, that means if you are configuring the node modules, and you can see that. So here, when you configure, it shows some error. It says that in the current project node modules, there is no CSS by that, there is no CSS. It is present outside and it is present in the workspace node modules. In the workspace, you have node modules. In that, we have that resources. In that case, you have to map the path completely. That is the reason generally what we do is, so that is the reason we use .. and we are referring that. This will be a problem in deploying because usually what happens is you are deploying only one application, not the entire workspace. Then this library will be missing. Then what we do is we keep all the resources in the local project related folder only, and we will deploy. So in that case, now this path will be correct for us. This path will be correct for us. So to avoid all this confusion, just people simply use slash. That means they simply use slash. That means it represents whatever the root folder is, whether it is application, then application root. If it is workspace, then it is workspace root. It configures that. So this is one important thing you need to understand while working with the concept of routes. So this is very regular thing about the routes. Another important regular question asked is about what is route guard, how to use route guards, what are the options about route guards. These are seriously the concept related to authentication, because actually to provide a authorized access, so you need some authentication. So you need to secure. That means now generally, if anybody teaches you, like you apply a route guard, it is not able to access. Then how it will able to access? You provide a username and password and you are an authorized person, then it will give access. Then how to verify the credentials? You need to verify from the database. You need to check from the database when user logs in. That means it is a concept which fits correctly good into the concept of authorization and authentication, especially when you are dealing with server-side technology. If I simply put one word like route guard is for this, and I will show you simple client-side example, then no use, time waste. So that is the reason we will put the concepts in the best fit manner, right? So here, generally, what is the concept, how they are used, we will discuss in the next example where we are learning end-to-end integration, right? So this is that there you will see better options how to handle that. One simple example I will show you that will help you in understanding the complete scenario actually. Yeah. So initially, these are all the points you need to know about routing. And one more is there about asked about routing is about what are route guards. So route guards. So what are route guards? So what is route guard and how do we use that, right? That you are going to learn in the next point. So that means it is nothing but in simple terms, you can simply say that it provides an authorized access to any configured route. So a developer knows clearly about what does this line means. That means everybody cannot access that component. So that means, for example, suppose I said here customers, okay, vendors, customers. Suppose we have admin. Customers and vendors, everyone can access, or you can put an authentication. Customers, then only customers can access. Vendors who have a role as vendor, then he only can access. Admin, a person who have role of admin, he only can access. And when he clicks on vendor, then it will say login as vendor. And when you log in as vendor, then it will return, so it will verify. So your credentials, are the credentials defined by you are correct or not? If the credentials defined you are correct, then obviously it will allow to access. So these are related to several other things you need to implement and configure here, which you will learn. No need to worry about that. For that, we will see integration with a database and we will see how we can manage this scenario. Right? Initially, so these are all the basic things that you need to understand about the concept of routing. And this base href is also very regularly asked in interviews. So you should know about that. Why we need base href? What is the purpose of base href? So, and where actually we use this base href mostly, this is done during the deployment process. We generally do that, right? So, and it is very important for deploying. Deploying, I will show in the next scenario how to work. Now, after understanding this, now we are going to see a complete scenario of end-to-end implementation. That means from database to client side, how the entire scenario works. There you will learn some more options in Angular, which helps us to integrate with server-side technologies, communicate with server-side technologies, and deal with them. That is where finally we can wrap this entire concept and you can understand a complete example end-to-end, how it actually works. But remember, I am additionally giving you some knowledge about server-side database and all right? Because if you know that, that will help you in understanding how actually Angular is integrated. Now you can do this with your Java, with your .NET, with your PHP, any technology that you are dealing with. So only the point here is, if I show how it is handled, then the same approach you have to follow. And if you know the complete scenario correctly, then you will not have a doubt like how to integrate with Java, how to integrate with the .NET. Actually, Angular is not integrated with Java and .NET. So Java, .NET, PHP, Python, all these use Angular for consuming the services. Now, how they create the services and work with the services. So that means we will see the process, the continuous option. That means now we are going to design an example, so which you can call as a mean stack. We will design a mean stack example. That means a complete end-to-end application. So in this mean stack, actually, M is MongoDB. So it is a database. MongoDB is a database. So we will see a database called MongoDB. And we have E, this is Express. Express is middleware. It is a middleware. So what is the purpose? I will tell you, right? And A is Angular. And this is client side. This is client side. And N is server side. That is Node.js. So N is Node.js. This is server side. This is server side. So we are going to deal with this complete scenario. That means we will maintain data in a database, and you can use MongoDB, MySQL, Oracle, any kind of database. And you can use a middleware, and you can use client side Angular to consume and interact with the services. Actually, earlier, so generally point is, instead of MongoDB, so different technologies. So you can use Oracle, you can use MySQL, you can use SQL Server, you can use so many databases. So as databases, as you can use them. So as database, that means you can use as database. So generally while configuring, while working with server-side technologies, especially server-side technologies, so middleware, that means Express is the middleware. Instead of Express middleware, you can use Oracle Fusion. So we can use WebSphere, right? You can use different middlewares. You can use Express, etc. You can use this as middlewares. People can use them as middlewares. And server side, so we have Node.js. So instead of using the Node.js, so you can use JSP, you can use PHP, you can use .NET. So you can use ASP.NET, right? Yeah, ASP.NET. You can use Python. That means you use Python with Django, Flask framework, etc. You can use them server side. And actually client side. So earlier we were using JavaScript. So and after that we were using jQuery, and we were using AngularJS, and now we are using Angular. So we can use React. So we can use so many things. It depends on the project and the requirement. And see, generally people who don't have a proper knowledge about this, they will ask, sir, will you show integration with the .NET? Will you show integration with Python? So nothing like integration. In your technologies, you will learn how to create services, APIs. And if anybody knows about API and services, he will not properly, if he knows properly them, he will not ask this question, like integrating them, right? So web services, right? So many. Now the point is why he will not ask, because he knows that his service can be consumed anywhere. and he know the behavior of the service. He need to just create a service in his technology. Client side using that service is common across any technology. Without knowing this basic point, so many people are very much confused and they ask like, will you show integration with Java? Will you show integration with .NET? No need to show any integration actually. Actually, those technologies will teach you how to create services, web services, API services. And those services are consumed across any client-side technology in the same way. Even that means JavaScript, jQuery, AngularJS. Only the point is this time you are using Angular. That means JavaScript, jQuery, how they are doing, AngularJS, how they are doing. Angular also does the same. Only the point is Angular utilizes all its facilities of services, components, and creates a proper presentation for interacting. That's it. Service is a service everywhere, right? Its consuming is same everywhere. Only the library used for consuming will change according to the technologies. That means, for example, JavaScript actually, later I will tell you services and all, we will discuss. For example, JavaScript uses XML HTTP request object for handling communication with services. jQuery uses Ajax for handling the request. And AngularJS uses like $HTTP. So AngularJS uses like $HTTP, right? These are the services actually they use for consuming services. And Angular uses like HTTP client. That means HTTP client. But finally, all these are HTTP client, $HTTP and $Ajax or $getJSON, so many are there. Now, all these are finally have to use this XML HTTP request object. That means this is the base for all client side. Even HTTP client depends on XML HTTP request object. It uses XML HTTP request object. So what we are going to learn now is finally how to create a database, how to configure middleware, how to create an API, how to consume in Angular. Means end-to-end integration, how we can read the data, how we can insert the data. And if you know those two, you can update and delete and perform other type of operations also. But for that, we need to create strong services in the server-side technologies. Now we are going to learn this complete scenario now. So first, for that, we will start with MongoDB. I will just give you one overview on. I am not teaching MongoDB and all. I will give you some basics for how to create database tables, add records, how to read them. That's it. Then I will show you how to use a middleware, Express, how to use server-side Node.js, and how to create API by using this, services by using this, and we will consume them in Angular. This end-to-end integration we are going to learn. That we will start from tomorrow's session onwards, right? So you cannot miss this now. Why? Because this leads to final integration. And when we learn final integration, some more things related to Angular, you will cover up all those concepts there. Then you will finally finish the concept, right? So tomorrow we will continue. And tomorrow we will start working with first how to create database, how to configure the database that is required for our application in the front end, right? Tomorrow we'll continue with that.